everyone. We're back with another video here on the channel. And with us we have a special guest from the other side of, I was about to say Europe, but let's say pond. Good old friend of us, Johan Arvidmark is here. Welcome.
Thank you, sir. Yes, there is a bit of a swim in between, for sure. The Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to try that out. Awesome. And of course, Matthias, you were with us as well. And the topic for this video for today is we're going to talk about Windows upgrades, and especially how it was in the past and what we could do then, what we did usually, but also, dive a little bit into the features for cloud native functionality and what we can do now with Intune, what potential burdens that we might need to overcome in certain scenarios and how we could do those things. But enough about that. Let's jump straight into it. Windows upgrades. I mean, there's a reason, I think, Johan, for why we decided to invite you here and why we are also very thrilled that you're with us. Because you are one of the, I would say, icons, right, in this kind of field. You have had tremendous of knowledge that you have gathered over the years on this topic, I would say.
Thank you so much. And yes, I've done it once or twice before, so.
Once or twice, okay. I would definitely have done it a little bit more.
But it's a nice thing, I think, when you do pretty much the same thing over and over again for 100 plus customers. Eventually, you get good at it. In fact, it's really hard not to get good at it if you do the same thing over and over again. So most of you out there have been doing everything in different shapes and form for 30 years, but the last 10 years, of course, we had servicing, and that's why we're here today. It started off with Windows 10 era, where Microsoft came out to all customers and say, hey, we have this great idea of you guys upgrading Windows 2 times a year. How about that? And organizations said, how about we don't?
Yeah. I know.
And they did. They didn't.
3 times a year, right? Really initially like 1507 or something like that.
Well, if you count 1507, 1511, well, technically that was the first half year because it was summer 2015. It was beautiful. But since then, it's been this 2 times a year. And then eventually Microsoft realized, okay, that might have been a little bit too aggressive. And the vendors, the OEMs, they had a hard time keeping up. And customers had a hard time keeping up. So eventually we are in this 1-year cadence now, thankfully. Where we have some time, and also we don't have to do an upgrade every single year if you don't want to. We can skip a year if you like, but at some point we have to.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing where you can actually skip, because we have done so within the organization where I work. We didn't jump to the latest, feature update that was available right immediately. We are even evaluating could we even skip that one, because the current 124H2 for Windows 11, there has been some, let's just be nice and diplomatic and say issues with it, right?
We don't have a single customer having that as their main upgrade right now, even though it has been available for a good few months. So most organizations I work with are currently rolling out Windows 11 23H2 because that's a very good version to be on.
Yeah, it's stable. It just works, right? You want the kind of stability from the ground up.
Yeah.
But then again, if you want to be on the cutting edge, right, have all the new functionality and features, there's kind of this, give or take scenario that you need to count.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about, config manager or SCCM, as many refer to them as. And if we think back a little bit, right, I mean, when I started doing Windows upgrades and in that field, I mean, I thought that was the most, interesting part of the whole SCCM or config manager product itself, because it was so customizable, right? You had a specific organizing tool that provided you capabilities of saying this happens in this specific order, and if this happened, then you have to do this and go back and do this, and so on, right? You had the sort of total control, and I even think that you even named some of your community solutions, and with total control and those kind of words, right? And it made sense, right? Because you were really in the driver's seat from that perspective. Looking forward a little bit with Intune, I think that things have changed because Intune provides you the capability of saying, take this Windows upgrade and make it available for your endpoints. And
I prepared some notes for this. Do you mind if I share them?
No, absolutely not. I mean, we were on the topic of how it worked in the past and what's going on now. And while you were lagging a bit there, I was shortly just mentioning that with Intune, we don't really have the same, built-in native capabilities that we may have been used to in the past, right?
So does this look okay, what I'm sharing now?
It looks good.
Beautiful. So one thing that I personally learned over the years is that if you don't provide at least a little bit of love and tender and care for the upgrades, you will have a pretty high failure rates. And that, of course, happens regardless of what platform you happen to use to do this upgrades or do this servicing with. So what we learned from the config manager background was that, for example, if we do certain things, we can reduce that failure rate from the default, say, 10% down to a couple of percent. Sorry to say you will never reach zero. It's just not possible. Maybe, but you will never have zero because there will always be something. You will find some hardware decided that today was the day it wouldn't want to give up, and you will have a network outage, you will have a power outage, you will have a few devices that were simply configured differently than anything else. So you will never reach zero. Sorry there. But what we learned there, that simply picking up the process in multiple phases was a good way to decrease the number of failures, to put in a lot of testing into the mix, making sure we have drivers and BIOS updated. Pretty much every vendor out there, Dell, HP, Lenovo, Microsoft, you name it. If you ask them about Windows 11 upgrades, they will recommend you to make sure you the latest BIOS version before you upgrade. And there are ways we can do that in Intune also. But that was one of those key things that's the version they test with. So you need to be on that version too, not just for security reasons, but also for reducing failures for upgrades. Now, a big thing in the config manager land was to always make sure you use an updated media. Now, Intune will take care of that for us because it has the options of downloading the latest components at upgrade time. But we can do things like providing drivers, etc., to the models that needs it. And this is more required when you're doing, say, a Windows 10 to 11 upgrade, perhaps when you go from 11 to 11. Usually an older Windows 11 driver will work just fine, but sometimes when you have a Windows 10 device and you upgrade to Windows 11, you need to tell Intune that, all right, I would really like to have these drivers. And then we also have the concept of providing other settings that could be valuable for the upgrade process. For example, if it fails, where do we copy the log files so we can have do some troubleshooting of it? How do we deal with things like language packs and other stuff? And maybe we can prepare by getting rid of junk before we do an upgrade, because we've learned that junk in the box, that's usually a common reason for failure. If you have a machine with, 100,000 files in the temp folder, low on disk space, the upgrade won't be happy about it. And those are things that technically today is quite easy to automate and put into the process. And then that's a little bit what we'll be sharing today, automated ways to deal with stuff like this. But
I can share a little bit of a funny story around that cleanup of leftover junk. So if you've followed along in our previous videos, you're probably well aware of that, where I work. We're currently upgrading to Windows 11. It's going relatively good. Spoiler alert. But what we found out by doing a little bit of sort of investigative work, if we call it that, was that we looked at the sort of amount of remaining disk space in our environment. And we found out that we had around 15%, which doesn't sound a lot. But if you convert that into numbers and you have 100,000 devices, That's 15%. That's 15,000 devices that would not be able to take the upgrade due to insufficient space, disk space, right? That's quite a lot of your end users that would be impacted with that. So what do you do about that, right? Can you just send out the policy /clean? I mean, what are your options, right? They're not really there. But I just, to fill in, the Windows upgrade itself, when it's offered, will attempt various ways of actually doing a cleanup before it actually starts to commit stuff on disk. However, in all instances, it's not very successful, but sometimes it can clean up a little bit. But then again, I think what you're saying there, Johan, it's a really good tip to understand, your environment, look at it from a successful or success perspective, right? I mean, do we have too many devices that do not have enough disk space to do the upgrade, right? Do we need to clean up this leftover junk then? Yeah, that's a really good point to make there.
Yeah, but there's a lot of things you guys can do to be ready for Windows 11. Not only do you have the telemetry, the upgrade experience indicators, and all that metrics on the devices that will tell you if a device will be blocked from an upgrade or not, but you also have the ability to run your own remediation script to figure things out. For example, most of our customers, they won't upgrade the device unless it says 25 gig of disk space free. And that's not because the upgrade requires 25 gigs. It's just because that's a good number to be at. You might very well be able to upgrade a machine that only has 15 gigs of disk-free space or free disk space. But what happens when you're done with the device? You have a machine where you just have a few gigs left. And that is almost to the point of being rude to the user using the device, because they will use it for a day or two, and then it's going to be very slow. But So this is basically the background story. How we solve things in on-premises platforms, and now as organizations are in different steps or stages of their cloud native journey, we need to figure out things to do this in the Intune land. And I know you both have some serious experience about that part, even like hands-on real life out there doing it. So I think I will leave back to you for a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely, no worries then. So Matthias, I mean, let's just quickly go through the different possibilities that you have with today with Intune, right? I mean, what is it that you can do? What options do we have? What's possible, and then how do they really work?
Absolutely. Well, but for starters, we had this complex way of actually building this task sequence, and it was nice for people like us, because we love to build Lego. We love to be able to evolve what we learn from the first customer to the next, to the next, to the next, and then you build towards perfect, right? And then in the end, you would have something that works most likely almost on 100%, not 100%, but it has a lot of good scenarios indeed built into the task sequence. We don't have that in Intune. We don't have anything called task sequence. We don't have anything called a sequence as such. We do have update policies, and we do have remediation scripts, etc. So there are lots of things we could do, but if we stay at what's built in today, we have Windows updates, and those are called Windows Update for Business policies. And basically what you can do here is create your own ring rollout policy, and in that ring rollout policy you would define some policies that would then apply to the device. It just means it's a bunch of registry policies or registry keys that apply on the device, which tells the regular Windows Update client on the device when to ask for a quality update and also when to ask for a feature update. There's no secret magic trick in that. But then Microsoft came up with another solution that, because having a deferral on 108 days for feature updates wasn't very good management of that, because if you are a business, a pharmaceutical company or something like that with processes that needs to stabilize a bit more and be a little more, plan ahead a little bit more when the feature update actually comes to your device, well, they created this new feature which is not part of Intune as such. It's another service that you run, which is called deployment service. So once you as actually also another license. So if you add that to these ways of managing, we don't any longer see a registry key on the device when you use this feature. It's more of a backend thing. So basically what happens when you apply a feature update is that if you have an Enter ID, it's going to ship that to the deployment service. And then once the device is actually asking Windows Update, like a regular private device, it's going to check on that deployment service if this ID is registered. And if that's true, it's going to ask the deployment service to come back with what is allowed to come down to this device. And that way, we are able to say, you cannot upgrade to further than 23H2 of Windows 11. So that's how the feature update policy works. You won't see anything on the device as such. To add to that, we also have another experience, and that's the auto patch experience, where you actually enroll into another service again, where Microsoft then have the responsibility of making sure your device is patched, and then you use the framework around that. And that requires another agent or at least some files on the device so that Microsoft AutoPatch team can see a little bit more. And it will also give you some better reporting once you go into that flow. But out of the box, you can see feature update reportings. You can see quality patch reporting now that came along for not many months ago. And there are also some possibilities to actually see software that is not capable of staying on your device once you upgrade. I don't know if you're familiar with the desktop analytics, but desktop analytics was a very, very nice feature with Config Manager, where you could kind of segregate device and say, I want to cover maybe 100% of my hardware. So it would then look into the database, see how much hardware you have, and then pull it together and say, this is your pilot, test on that, and you have pretty good picture of what's happening in your organization. We don't have that anymore, but we have what I just told about. And, well, to be honest, it's not very much, but Microsoft also wants to put all the intelligence, so it's going to be simple on our side, but all the intelligence on the backend side. So if there are things going on your client, you would have a safeguard saying, hey, I know there are drivers, I know there's a bad thing happening on your device if you were upgrading, so I will save you that trouble. So that's pretty neat. But as an IT admin, as people like Johan and you, Nikolai, it would have been nice to have this Lego to play around. How do we solve it?
Can you solve it?
Can we solve it? Of course we can solve it. It's Windows, right?
It is. I was just looking through because I opened up a few sort of windows on top, and I just need to rearrange. I mean, one of the good things with a big screen is that you can see a lot of stuff, but when presenting like this, it's always a nightmare to get everything in order. So share the screen and Windows tab. So I hope that this is coming through now. Yeah, it looks like it. Mm-hmm. Great. First of all, right, it's Windows. It's basically the Windows setup that we're kicking off when we are upgrading Windows in a way, right? And Windows setup, as everyone hopefully knows, has a ton of different setup command line options. So we can basically adjust the upgrade experience by telling it to, like Johan mentioned earlier, that we sort of already have the latest bits and pieces when we do it through Intune and the cloud native solution these days. We can specify something related to always, get the dynamic updates. We can, as it says here on the top, we can configure BitLocker if you want to or need to deal with anything related to that. And, there's tons of these things. And eventually what we would need to do from Intune is to draft a file that's called SetupConfig.ini, and we need to put it in a special place. We will show you later exactly where that space is. But if you have this capability of, controlling and manipulating this file, basically, you have a way of saying, okay, well, here is how we want the upgrade to go about, based on those options available. And some of these options are actually, in fact, really interesting, because one of them is called post UBE, however you say that in English, I'm not really sure, but the out-of-box experience, right? And here we can reference a script file. So that basically tells us, okay, when the upgrade itself has completed. So when Windows thinks that, or when the setup thinks that, now we completed this here, right? We are in a good state and we should now run this script. And that gives you the command or the possibilities to at least, maybe not do that sort of pre-cleanup. But what it does is it gives you a way of, okay, maybe I need to put some files or alter something on the system, or simply just flash up a window saying everything went fine. You can now continue to use your computer. Please clean up your coffee mug afterwards, whatever, right? I mean, that there's any possibilities out there. And this is something that at least we are leveraging quite a lot, because I see this as a factor of, okay, let's say I want to change the theme. Maybe I want to put a wallpaper in place. Maybe I want to run a script to remove unwanted built-in apps that have appeared with the new version that I'm running, right? I mean, so this setup complete could be seen as think of it as this total control kind of task sequence method, but you need to do the hard work yourself. So basically, Windows provides you with this initialization of something that you then, with PowerShell, for instance, controls. And that, I think, is the way forward. This is how we need to do it these days. And of course, there's also something, if you need to roll back, well, then you can trigger a different script. But the way that I see specifically the setup complete file is that's the initialization that I can use to have a script that runs multiple scripts in sequence, and a sequence that I decide, right? So what's your thought on that, guys?
I think that's yeah, sorry, Nick, you're jumping in queue here. No, I think it's pretty clever. I think it sounds like the customization I would like. Have to be careful, though, that you don't do a post whoopsie and a post OOBE instead.
No, a little bit of error handling has its place for sure, but this is also how we can tell setup to use drivers if needed. This is how we can copy log files to a location that I mentioned. And we also have this particular switch that Nikolai just highlighted that not too many people know about, but this was something that Microsoft enabled back in Windows 10, 18.03 to change the behavior for the user experience running the app. So this one today is enabled by default, and it means that the upgrade process will spend more time in the first down-level phase where the user is still using the device. It can stay up there for half an hour sometimes, depending on the device. And then it will reboot and it will do the rest of the upgrade very, very quickly. So from a user experience, that's a really nice option, and that's why it's enabled by default. But if you just want to upgrade the device quickly, it is actually faster to disable this one, because then it will go through the total process quicker. You save 4 or 5 minutes. But it's not more than that. So usually we leave this one on, but it's a cool one to know about if performance is of an sort of importance to you, because it does make a difference. And not many people know about it either.
I'll be honest, I had forgotten about this one, but it makes total sense when you say it right now, because quite many years back at this point, there was a lot of talk of, when this came out, Microsoft said, oh, we have really made everything faster, right, from the looks of it. And we have pushed more of the upgrade itself towards the backend processes that happens without no user interaction, really. But I totally forgot about that. So thanks for mentioning that. That's interesting.
No worries.
Awesome. But, this is all cool. We can do these things with... Have anyone done these things, though? Have anyone shared something on the community around this? I asked myself that question around 8-9 months back, and I found a little bit of information here and there, bits and pieces. Johan had shared a lot of good stuff on the overall process with the various...
I did a session at Ignite last summer on this topic, and for that I developed a basic remediation script that pretty much generates everything you need for that part to basically create the folders, to create the scripts that you need, etc. But then there is always someone who decides to, no, let's build a real solution, like a real solution. And he's wearing, well, you both are wearing hats, but okay, he's wearing a gray hat, and it looks like gray from over here. So
I think it's supposed to be Red Bull blue. So again, maybe that's grayish these days. It was raining in Australia yesterday when the first round was up. So
nonetheless, I was up super early a Friday a few weeks back and listening to one session that you presented at the Nordic Virtual Summit, and that was pretty much when I think you launched your solution around this. So maybe I can convince you to do a little bit of a demo, perhaps.
I think you can, for sure. And that's the idea here. So we talked a little bit about the possibilities up until now, what you can do natively within Intune and what's possible. And also stepped a little bit into the sort of customizations around it, because not in every case or every upgrade scenario you will be, happy with the possibilities. You might want to do various tasks of removing certain stuff or handling certain things, right? I mean, we have been accustomed to do that over many years of operating Windows. And I didn't show it before, but there's also, in terms of the setup command line options, there is something called custom actions. And custom actions are very, very similar to the setup complete, where the setup engine is basically responsible for kicking off your sort of initialization script. But with the custom actions, you also have the possibility of triggering actions prior in various phases of the upgrade. So you can basically combine this and really start to look at this if you put it on a timeline scale, right? You can do things in the beginning, you can do things right before something happens, and then after the upgrade completes. So you have a pretty good way of controlling these things if you were just, able to very easily put these files in place from Intune and put them or configure them appropriately. And that's very much the intention of what my, like I always say, bad named community solutions, but the feature update controller. That's the intention of it all. And you will find it as everything else that we put online and share with the community in our GitHub repository, the MSM Point Manager one, named Feature Update Control. And what we see here is basically something that you would clone down on an administrative device. The engine here is Intune's remediation script packages, right? This is how it's built. It's a very large detection script that is basically the sort of engine of making sure that all the aspects that you will configure is being handled and treated on that device or on all devices that you manage. So let me just do a quick scroll here so that you can understand that there has been some thought and love and sweat, to be honest, and late nights put into this. It's not the longest script that I've ever built, but yeah, there's just a lot in here. And the way that you would control this script is through a JSON file. So somewhere in Azure, perhaps, what you would do is you would have a storage account where you would have a public accessible container where you would put every file related to this solution. And one of them is the manifest one, because this one controls how the detection script executes on your devices. And the cool thing here is because within the detection script, you say, okay, use this manifest file on this storage account in this container. That gives you the capability of splitting things up, testing new things in your dev environment or ring 0 or name it whatever you want. Use the manifest 0 file or dev file, call it whatever, right? So you have ways of possibilities of altering these things, testing it out, and then simply just copy paste over the JSON configuration and whatever necessary files, put that into your production container. And that's your sort of transition from a testing to production scenario. And that works really well with this. Let's just skip over the module for a quick second there, because we talked about SetupConfig and all the different command line options available. This is basically it. So for each of them that you could find in that documentation from Microsoft, you simply specify them like this. And the post out-of-box experience is specified like this. It's a simple value for a path on the device. And as you can see, you would have to enter a company name here, where it doesn't have to be a company name, just a directory name. And what the script then does is that it will create this file for you and then keep it up to date with the instructions on what should happen. And what should happen is this, because the SetupConfig file is basically a file within a WS container or WSUS folder on the client that has the command line options. One of them being this, or referencing this file. But where should that, what should that file do? Well, you can control that as well. Because, right, I mean, batch files, they are pretty good at initiating stuff. And I see Johan, he's laughing a bit there, right? But then again, you can't really go extremely wild and crazy unless you're an uber geek in terms of batch scripting. So what this automatically does with this solution is that it's going to simply point to a PowerShell script that you created, that it also downloads and puts in a specific folder. So you have the complete control of doing whatever you like. All simply just handed to you out of the box. So that's the idea. And
question, Nikolai.
Yeah, sure.
The setup complete that PS1, is that also downloaded from the blob storage?
It is, for sure. And I can show you the blob storage really quickly here. It looks like this, just a regular container with lots of different scripts. And here's the setup complete. And let me explain what I was thinking in terms of these things, because like I said, setup complete is the initialization sort of phase for me. I maybe want to, do various tasks. And this is where the modules, as I kind of call them, comes into play. Let's say everybody knows that Microsoft have done a, should I say, unnecessary job of making it complicated for us to provide a default start menu that a user can then go and change afterwards. Basically, today it's on or off. You can control it, it's locked, no change, or you just skip it. A lot of people would argue, let's just skip it because there's no real alternation or alternative there. I beg to differ, because I think a company, if they choose so, or an organization, if they choose so, should provide a good branded experience out of box for the user. So you say, oh yeah, I feel really proud that this is my work laptop. There's thoughts gone into it, but I want my cat on the wallpaper, right? Or I want these stupid apps in the start menu. I should be able to change that. I should have what the company thinks should be in the start menu. and then what I think should be in the start menu. That's not the case today. So what we did was to create a script that does exactly that. Very much based on the solution from, sorry, I'm so bad with names. Michael Niehaus. Sorry, Michael, if you're watching this. With his research on the start to bin file, because that's a terrific solution. It works really great. You create your start to bin file, you push it up here, and so forth. And this script basically takes it, puts it into the right place, off you go. You have your company branded start menu as you want, but the end user can do whatever they like. There's no sort of lockdown experience there. And the same thing goes on for other modules if you want to set up wallpaper. I mean, these are just examples that I've decided to share so that you have something to work with, look at different approaches to deal with these kind of things. But essentially what you can do here is run your own script, do whatever you like, right? You have free hands of just coming up with whatever you want. And this is what SetupConfig does. It executes all of these different module scripts in sequence, and off you go. Then, in addition, there's a few other sort of configurations, and many of them are related to custom actions. You could mix and match with these things if you want to, perfectly fine. But in this sort of example, you can see that, okay, so we don't really do anything beforehand. We do everything once the upgrade completed by using the setup complete reference. But then if something fails, it would be kind of cool if we could run a script to tell us something that it failed, maybe send a report somewhere, update the log analytics workspace, whatever it wants to be. Then we make use of the custom actions, where we simply just specify, well, we want this to be a run once occurrence. We don't want this to run every time we upgrade something. It needs to be just there for the time being, because it might be that we update the script in the future or something. And this is the file. And really, what it looks like is very simple in this example. We do some logging. In this instance, I just shared a function for get your geo coordinates if you want to send that in. So how many devices have upgraded across the world from different locations, whatever it might be. Or do I have a larger failure rate of upgrades in this region? What could that lead to? Do we have a low utilization, or I don't know, of some sort? Could be. I mean, you have total control here. You can do whatever you like.
That's pretty smart, actually. These coordinates, where are you getting that from? Is that Windows itself coordinates?
It's the Windows location services.
Yeah, we had an instance just not long ago where North America office went to Moscow in Russia.
Oh yeah,
it was based on the
Moscow or Russia within what was it, XML file that you share, something with keyboard or localization of some sort, right?
Yeah, it was a longitude, and that was wrongly configured in the Microsoft table of that automatic content. So so that was pretty fun. The office there did not think it was especially fun. So
awesome. So if we just quickly switch over to how this looks on the device. So let's assume that you've set up your remediation script package, you've deployed it somehow, you're done your setup in terms of the storage account and those bits and pieces. What you will end up with after the first execution is basically something similar to this. And here you can see the setup complete. Well, there's a lot of spinning here. What's going on? The setup complete file. And it looks like this. And this is what I mean with simply just a reference pointer, right? This is automatically created by the solution, where it points to your specified setup complete PowerShell script instead. So this simply just invokes that script. And within that, okay, let's do this instead of looking at it this way. The setup complete script itself basically just, okay, so it's looking from a few references within the registry, which I will show really quickly. It will understand which of the modules have been installed, and then basically just figure out how to execute them, do a little bit of logging, and making sure that you can follow along that the solution is doing what it's supposed to do, and triggering those things in action or in sequence. The temp folder is just a temp folder, and the modules folder is where all of these scripts have been downloaded to, and their support files. If we take the start menu as an example, you have the support file and the script file. I mean, no rocket science here. It's relatively simple things going forward. Same with custom actions. If you have a custom action specified and you have a script file, it will attempt to download it and put it in here. Going back a little bit, within the user's default app data local Microsoft Windows WSUS folder, this is where the SetupConfig.ini file lives, right? And this is the one we need to have created so that the Windows upgrade experience is being customized based on your setup command line options. If we quickly just look into that, it should resemble everything else that I have within the manifest.json file, specifically also for the post out-of-box experience command and the rollback options. So all this file has also been created by the solution for you, basically for free. And if you had a custom action specified with the option or the occurrence of only run once with each upgrade, you would have the folder. It would generate its sort of unique GUID name. And within here, it would generate the CMD file that Windows is looking for. And it would also just simply be a reference point to the actual custom actions failure file that has been downloaded and put in place, right? So all in all, this is really what the script does. And what it also does is that if you were to update the file in your storage account, say, you made a mistake in the script, you need to do some changes or something. Well, the next time the remediation script runs, it will re-download this file and keep it updated. You also have a way of, if you paid attention to the manifest here with each module, you have a way of version handling these kind of things. So for each module, it will always check if it's running the latest module that it has a copy of within the registry locally on the device versus what's the most updated one within the manifest file. So if there's a mismatch, you're not on par, it will simply just download the support file and the script files again, so that it will continue to be in the most current state on that device until you change it and stop it. And if you remove a module from the modules manifest, well, the module will be removed and so forth. Same goes for custom action. So, I mean, you have really, and let's use Johan's word, total control, in my opinion, right? And if you were to execute it, very simply, just, this is a demo, so I'll run it locally instead of waiting for Intune. Nothing is really fancy there, but you would find this eventually when it kicks off. You will find the feature of the controller within this path here. And eventually you will see everything that it does. It's checking for the modules, for instance, here. It's looking through some stuff in terms of the unique GUID for custom actions. And yeah, basically, if you want to really dig into it, you have a log file. You can check it out there. If you were to have any issues, there's a pretty good much logging going on. So I would just suggest look at this file first, because it will most likely give you the idea of what you might have configured wrong or what I have coded wrong. That's also a possibility. But yeah, that's it.
Is there a bug bounty if we find bugs? What is the bug bounty?
I just heard that Matthias signed up for being the financial cost in terms of bug bounty program.
$1 million. All right, yeah, that's good. Yeah,
absolutely.
That's really nice.
Or a good Danish beer, that works also.
I can do that.
I just want to show the last thing that this solution comes with. So whatever company name that you put and reference in the script when you set it up in the remediation script is what's going to be used here. Then you will have a feature update controller within the registry, and you will have your custom actions. That's going to have some reference to what's installed, where it's installed, and what's the wrapper, and so forth. Same goes with the modules, dark theme. What's the script? Is there any support files? Where is the path of execution? What's the locally installed version, and so forth. I think with that, go back to our GitHub repository here. Check it out. All of the setup instructions are provided within this repository. But you can also look at this video again if something is unclear. Just go backwards a bit. What do you think? Is this useful?
This is what Microsoft should have done all along. So Nikolai, thank you for supporting the community. This is very much required, needed, if you are to do any sort of large-scale upgrades using a modern platform. It's simply we need to have stuff like this, in my opinion. So, thank you. This is good stuff.
It's really good stuff. And yes, I very much agree. There are no standards out there. I very much are doing a modern project at the moment for 4 years now. It's a big customer. A lot of things that needs to happen just on the autopilot modern provisioning part. I mean, that's just one small part of what we're doing here. Now it's Windows upgrades, and once we are using autopilot for every device, we also need this solution to upgrade our devices, because we are on 23H2 and might skip the 24H2 and then move on. I hope next build will be a little bit more
stable.
Solid.
Yeah. I wouldn't say yeah. Do I dare to say so? Yeah. But
yeah, we do.
That was what I meant, We've seen so many things happening on 24H2, and it's also a full upgrade. So the experience will be exactly the same as upgrading from 10 to 11, so to speak.
I just want to round things off and saying I think, if we look back at some years in time when like you started showing off there, Matthias, with the update rings and those things, right, where we had basically a very simple ways of handling everything from a Windows as a service or servicing perspective, right, or operating. I think that looking from that and looking where we are today, honestly, nobody's paying me to say this. I think Microsoft have come a really long way of listening to what we have said and what is it that we need, right? Because without the feature update policies, I would not have been comfortable in upgrading hundreds of thousands of devices with Intune. That's my honest truth. And without the capabilities that Microsoft also built into Windows of letting us run these scripts at certain stages of the upgrade, that's also a big thing in here. So if you
Nikolai,
those things,
we need to let Johan go. He needs to be somewhere else now.
Yeah, he's an important guy, so let's round it off.
Yeah, but really, we can continue our rant. But Johan, was nice to have you, and of course,
thank you for having me. Always happy to join. Thank you for doing this. Have a good day.
Have a good day,
Johan.
Bye.
Yeah, but Nikolai, huge work. I mean, my goodness. How long did it take you to build this module? I mean,
like I said before, it's not an enormous script, right? I mean, but it did take. I mean, when I started out, the whole idea was simply just, okay, I need to create this SetupConfig.ini file, and I'm done. Which then led me to do a bit more research into everything around this, where I essentially said or figured that it would be, useful if we could do these things. And one thing led to another. Some discussions occurred. Eventually we said that, well, I think it would be cool to have this real-time, capability of understanding how is the upgrade progressing. Because all the data that we have within Intune today coming from the Windows updates stuff, and that's the telemetry data, right? It's a bit delayed. I can't remember on top of my head if it's like 12 or 24 hours. I think 24 hours.
Yeah, it's a cloud minute.
Cloud minute, right? I mean, that gives you a peek into how it looked at a certain time. That's not really 100% sure when and how your state looked. But if you want to have a more aggressive, understanding and maybe, real-time update, not maybe real-time, but really close to that. Let's say each device send you a message of some sort to whatever system that you want to collect that message in. Let's say Log Analytics, for instance. You could build on top of that, right? Because you could build your own layer where you say, oh, these are the amounts of devices that are currently waiting for a restart, potentially, or whatever you might do, right? And these are the amounts of devices that have potentially performed an upgrade, failed, but then something has been remediated because X amount of time later, it actually successfully upgraded. So it gives you the capability of extending the I would say reporting aspects, right, of what's available within Intune today. So, but to answer your question, I think we spent around a month's time, give or take, not 100% dedicated to this, but back and forth. A few evenings while waiting for my daughter to fall asleep has been spent in coding this. But honestly, Copilot, I'm going to say it, GitHub Copilot, it's amazing. It helps tremendously when you do these kind of projects because it really understands your way of coding and then adapts to that and suggests really useful code, to be honest. So there I said it. I said Copilot.
I said it, but
do we get an extra point?
No, but I mean, you can say Copilot whenever it actually helps you do your work, and for this purpose, I mean it seriously. I'm using it too. So if you have the license, there's really no shame of using AI as it should be, because you still need your brain. You still need to know how to build code, how to build modules, but it's going to help you suggest code, and yeah, it's awesome.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But
I mean, if you feel that there's any questions on this subject, reach out, write a comment, or reach us on X or Blue Sky. Yeah, it was fun to cover this topic. Actually, maybe we should do more of these in the future.
Indeed, and maybe even show how this whole thing is set up from A to Z, and see the device upgrading and see it's being customized and stuff. I don't know if that's something people would want to watch, but it would be very long. But I mean,
it would take 24 hours.
Live call, yes. We'll have to wait a cloud minute to see what actually happened on the device. No,
oh yeah.
But jokes aside, it makes no sense to sit there and wait 24 hours if the device never came to Windows 11. I mean, the way you build it here with instant reporting is the way to go. You can't just sit around and wait. People are having a device that's ruined. I know upgrades are pretty compatible and also pretty resilient and getting back to a working state, but it could happen that the device is broken, and then you would only know if the user complained and put in a high ticket number or something like that. So
I mean, one thing that we have seen that has been really useful when we made use of this feature update controller capability of almost real time sending in failure messages has been when somebody calls the help desk, right? The help desk can quickly get in contact with the team that have access to this data and query them to say, this device, the user is saying that it failed the upgrade. Of course, the help desk personnel can, establish a remote session towards the device, figure out within the event logs and so forth. but it's very easy if we were to, in the next step, maybe just expose this data directly to the help desk, give them a portal or simple web app where they can simply just put in the computer name, right? And say, oh yeah, here's the events on the latest upgrade that you had. Well, I can see that you had this error code here. Okay, interesting. Well, looking in my internal database or whatever, this might be related to that your disk is full, whatever, right? And that could, speed up the sort of, user experience within those troubleshooting scenarios where the help desk may be involved. So, I mean, yeah, I just think that there's endless possibilities with this.
Cool. I love to see anyone customizing this any further, building, extending, whatever, and shout a message and tell Nikolai what you used the solution for.
Maybe it needs to have a good module. Make a pull request to the repository, and we will definitely consider of adding it in there so other people can also have or make use of that. Sharing is caring, somebody told me once.
It is. Now we just need to build it together with the modern device driver framework that we have for config manager, so we can get those drivers down to the device.
Yeah, are you telling me to do that? I'm not best friends with the current drivers and firmware updates functionality within Intune. I think it's great that it gives a little bit off topic here, but that it gives you a way of manually handling it. But if you want to semi-automate it a bit, it's way complicated. Because of the architecture and how it was based on devices sending in requests, that's what's being shown, how it's divided into, and how that you need to have all of these different policies. And yeah, I can go on and on about that, but and maybe that's for another video.
But you can do a lot if you, for example, in Lenovo, you can do a lot with the CLIs and stuff like that. So
the vendor tools are generally really
vendor tools is great for that purpose as well, and you get even newer drivers than you get from the enterprise catalog. So maybe that's the recommended way.
Oh yeah, I don't know. Cool. I think it's time to round it off, Matthias. So we had Johan with us for this one because we felt that he has a lot of experience within this field, and we hope to share this further with this new community tool of ours. So thank you for watching. Have a great day, and see you next video.
Absolutely. Goodbye.